Welcome to a Day in the Life video series from your therapy source with your host, Margaret Rice.
Welcome to a Day in the Life series that I've been doing, interviewing lots of different teachers, OTs, PTs. We're going to have lots of different people participating. And today we have Julie with us, and we can start out by just finding out. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, please, Julie.
I'm an occupational therapist in the Kettering City Schools here in Kettering, Ohio.
And how did you pick that job? How did you go about becoming an occupational therapist?
Well, it's kind of funny. When you talk with therapists, a lot of them have had a family member who maybe got OT, or maybe they got OT themselves, or they worked with OTs in the hospital, but for me, my first career after graduating from high school was in sales. And I lived in Indiana, and I sold real estate first. I was a realtor there, and then love brought me to Ohio to my husband, and I went into sales again here. And then when we started having a family, we very quickly discovered that those two did not go well together.
Yeah, real estate's tough hours.
Yes. And so I decided it was time for me to look for another career path. And so I went to the community college locally here and took a career assessment to find out what kind of careers fit what my likes and dislikes were. And some funny things came up. It said I'd be a fantastic CEO, which I thought would be a little lofty as trying to do. Also said I'd be a good tree surgeon. And I thought, well, I can't think that there's a huge demand for that. But then occupational therapy came up, and I have to be honest, I had no idea what it was when I first looked into it. And so I looked into it a little more and then took an intro class at the community college, and the rest is history. So
That's awesome. And did you go to school full time then, or were you working
I
at the
went,
same time?
well, when my children were small, I was kind of doing school as I could, getting my associate's degree first. And then I, at that time, did not have the energy to work with kids. I remember, my clinical affiliation that I had at that time was with a very energetic coda. And I remember thinking, there is no way I can do this and go home and be a mom. And
Right. Too much kid
so
time.
yes. And so I went from, the really wanting to work with kids to working in skilled nursing for the first 6 years of my career.
Okay,
Um,
interesting.
and then 3 years into that first 6, I decided to go back to school and get my master's degree. And
Okay.
during that time, taking the classes and such, I'm like, you know what? I think my family's ready and I'm ready to try working with kids. And so I made the leap from skilled nursing to school-based. Started with the schools in 2008 and just finished my 14th year with them. So yeah, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, and that's a big change. It's almost like 2 completely different jobs, really, I
Oh
would
yeah,
think. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. It is two completely
I'm a
jobs.
PT and I've done both, but the skill set is very, very
Hmm.
different. It is
Yeah,
very, 2 different jobs. So
yeah.
interesting. And I'm sure you like the school schedule better.
Oh yes. Yeah, this is my summer hair don't care look. So in fact, if somebody from school gets on this thing, they probably won't even recognize me.
That's okay. So have you been in the same school district for your entire 14 years now that you've been back to school-based OT?
I have. I have. I was
Okay.
very lucky. I had one of my family members retire from the district, and she kept telling me, you need to check this district out. Got onto their consortium and interviewed, and got an interview and got offered a job pretty quick. And I'm not sorry. I mean, I'm very happy with the district I'm with. Um, they're fantastic to their therapists, and feel very supported and have a great, student base there. We have about 8,000 students in our
Oh,
district.
that's a big district.
Yeah, and there's only 5 OTs, but we keep very busy, very busy.
Now, do you have any quotas or just all 5 OTs?
We do not have quotas. I wish we
Okay.
did, because I'll tell you, I've had them as students come through that I've done field work with, and they're invaluable to our profession. But I think it would be difficult with the amount of kids that we see to be supervising, because we probably have to supervise 2 or 3, and it would be hard. We'd be traveling
To
all over
juggle
the
it.
place. Yeah.
Are you in one school, multiple schools?
I actually am in the past, I've worked in as many as 3 buildings, but just over the last few years, I've gotten to where my caseload in the building I'm in is large enough that that's all I can handle.
Okay.
I each couple buildings in our district have like a specialty, and the building that I'm in, we specialize in working with kids on the autism spectrum. So we have classrooms for them in the building, 4 classrooms for the autism students that work just on, they only have autism students in the classroom. And we have a lot of preschoolers that come through that are on the spectrum as well.
Okay.
So my caseload there has grown so much that I don't have time to go somewhere else. So
Well, that's
yeah,
nice. It's nice to be in one building because it can
it
be
is.
hectic traveling to different buildings.
Yeah.
Now, in those classrooms, do you see most of those students individually in small groups? Is it
I,
a collaborative effort?
I do see them individually, and in fact, I co-treat with speech therapists quite a bit with these students. We do a lot of activities together. I do co-treat with PT too. That's more, I see students in our district itinerantly, so those
Okay.
students that aren't well enough to be in the building. PT and I will go out and provide their services at home. But a lot of our co-treats in the building are with speech. We do a lot
Okay.
of co-treats that way. Yeah.
And as part of your schedule, you're allowed time to go to those homes during the school day, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I ended the year with only a couple students that were receiving OT itinerantly. So the number of students that I provide that kind of service to is not huge, but certainly I have to say that I think that the pandemic caused that number to kind of grow for some of
Right.
our other disciplines. But it certainly for me, it hasn't been out of control to where I couldn't do it.
Couldn't
So
manage it with your caseload at
yeah,
the school. And
yeah.
how many children do you have on your caseload, about approximately?
I finished the school year with 49. At the
Okay.
highest point, I think I had 52.
And
So
that's preschool through what age
pre
level?
preschool through 5th grade is kind
Okay.
of my
Okay, nice.
specialty. Yeah,
Very
yeah.
nice.
So
And have you always worked with students with autism, or this is
no,
new?
when I started working with the ones in this building, it just kind of got to be something. And working with the speech therapists that I work with there's 2 speech therapists in that building. It kind of became our niche, I should say. I mean, I think that we've really learned a lot about how to work with them, and the teachers we have that work in those classrooms are phenomenal. And I think that it's something I enjoy because it's very challenging, but it's different every single day. It is not a boring group to work with because you never know what you're going to get, but very rewarding at the same time.
And do you mostly work in the classroom, or do you have a therapy room?
We actually are very blessed to have an entire classroom that is just for therapy, that the speech therapist that works with preschool and I share, and we co-treat a lot of those students in there. So it kind of gives us a quiet environment to work in. And we have, the benefit of, a lot of activities that we have set up in the room, and the ability to get them to concentrate a little more.
To stay focused on the
Yeah.
task. And yeah.
Now during after we reopened after COVID, we were forced to be in the classrooms more, only because they didn't want the students traveling around the building very much. So they tried to keep them more together in
To
the
reduce
room. And
transitions.
yes, and it
And
did make things a little challenging.
how was it during COVID? Extremely challenging?
It was challenging enough that I know I looked at how many years of service do I have there? How many more do I need to retire? And I know that it pushed a lot of people to leave the district because it was very challenging going from sitting next to a student working to trying to do like you and I are doing now, trying to get them to attend to a screen or getting them to even focus in their home environment was very difficult. And for a lot of our kids, they just couldn't do it.
Right.
So mom and dad became therapists. I mean, we, had to provide what we provided through mom and dad, and it was hard. I think it helped them to see the value in what we do, but it was very difficult, very
Right.
difficult.
The positive there is that the parents got a little bit more education and insight into how to work with their child through your lens. But the
Yes,
negative is, via the way that you were able to do it was very
right.
difficult. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And I'm
Now,
not a technology person, so it was a learning curve for me to,
right, right. I think even technology savvy people went through a learning curve there.
yeah,
Yeah, I think
definitely.
it was a hard time. Um, Now, when you're writing your IEPs, this is a question I've been asking quite a few therapists. Do you collaboratively write them with the teachers? Do you have your own individual OT goals? How does that process work?
Well, it depends on the age of the student. We kind of, as a district, the therapists that work with preschool, we kind of came up with um, to put it a better way, a laundry list of what we want them to achieve by the time they go to kindergarten. What kind of skills do we want to have in place? And then, taking them from where they are at the time they're evaluated and, what's that next baby step going to look like for the first IEP and, to achieve that by kindergarten if possible. And then with the school age students, especially the ones on the spectrum, I do look to the teachers a lot for what kind of things are you seeing, because they are different with me than they are with
Right,
them. And a lot of times I can get them to do things the teacher can't and vice versa. So I find that there's a skill that I've been working on an entire IEP period that they've mastered in the classroom. And so it's just the difference of the environment. And it's like, well, they don't need to work on that anymore.
right,
If they
right,
can, if
right,
they can do it generalized, if they can't do it in isolation, that's okay.
right,
So the
right.
skill's there. But yeah, we do, I do collaborate with them. Sometimes I collaborate with speech on some of our students that are really our lower students that, that's something we found out with this pandemic, they were at home for especially with the preschoolers coming in that were on the spectrum. Mom and dad had no idea that this wasn't normal. They were attached at the hip to mom for 18 solid months and then taken to school, which was a big wake up call for both mom and the child. But then trying to figure out how to work with these kids that were even more delayed than they would have already been, just because of lack of environmental inputs that they needed, being isolated. A lot of them came in with sensory issues. Almost every single one had sensory on their IEP because they were deprived of so much.
Right, when everybody was juggling so much at home, parents
Oh
having to
yeah,
work from home, and it's unfortunately, just a long-term effect really of it's
yeah,
not just
stress,
social
the stress
emotional.
effect. Yeah,
Exactly. There's a lot of motor development delays that they're seeing. So it is quite difficult.
yeah.
Um, and so you're collaboratively writing the goals, getting input from everybody. Do you write your services as 2 times a week, 3 times a month? How are you when you write it on the
Usually,
IEP?
usually we provide services once a week. There are a handful of students that get services twice a week. Those students that have the shorter attention span, we might break up their time into shorter sessions twice a week. Typically, our preschoolers are, only able to stay in anywhere from 15 to 20-minute sessions, and our school age kids usually can do 30. Um, and that seems to be a good amount that works for them, and it works for their daily schedule because so much has become times when we cannot take them from class,
Right.
um,
I'm
because
assuming
they're
during
all,
reading or math, during some academic
yeah,
materials.
any of the core kind of things, and so much of things that used to be, like art and music and library used to be more like we're going to give you this extra stuff. Well, now there's a core curriculum tied to it, so they can't miss these things. And so it's made our job more challenging for sure.
To schedule everybody. Yeah, that's the
Yes.
worst. The
Yes.
worst.
Yes.
What would you say is the best thing about your job?
The best thing about my job, I would say, is the one-on-one interaction with the kids. I have to say, like during the pandemic when we were all masked up, and I had one little boy that I met him in a mask, never saw his face, and the first time that we had no masks on, it was just like we were meeting each other for the first time, and went to class, and I said, I have no idea what he looks like. You're gonna have to point him out to me.
Uh-huh.
But the one-on-one interaction, the kids look forward to coming down to therapy. And the ones like my fifth graders that were moving on this year to middle school that I won't see anymore, and them being sad to leave, and seeing all the growth they've had, in the years that we've worked together is very rewarding.
And so you're able to stay with those students then year over year, because if you're in that
Yes.
same building, which is nice, that is
Yeah,
nice.
with me being the only OT there, it's, if they go from preschool to kindergarten and they need to be in a different building, that doesn't happen. But most of the ones that transition from our building are staying there. So it's a good thing.
Okay, that's cool. How about what's your biggest struggle, do you feel like, on a day-to-day basis?
Um, my biggest struggle is trying to get those kids on an IEP that needs one. The fact that we cannot stand alone on an IEP makes it really difficult when you have a student that maybe is moving or something, and you're realizing that there is a very big need there, and that you just can't give them enough, and you would like to see, it's having to fight to get them
More support.
tested and get the support that they're going to need to be successful. It's difficult. It really is.
And how about, could you share one of your favorite success stories? Maybe you don't have to provide any obviously identifying information, but anything you can think
Um,
of that stands out?
During the pandemic, I had a student on the spectrum that really struggled to write. And I didn't realize the effect that I had on her until we were looking at each other across a computer rather than sitting beside each other. I think I took it all for granted. And then when
Mm-hmm.
we were with each other, and seeing her mom interact with her and trying to do what I do, and seeing how she was continuing to want to engage because she got to see Miss Julie on the computer, and she'd be very excited. She would like be on the Zoom call 10 minutes before the time started, ready to go, and it was that was a success for me because I had no idea I had that impact on her, and it was good to see.
Right. So it changes how you look when you work with other students too, that it's
Yes,
motivating. You
yes,
realize how much your interaction affects their motivational level,
yes,
which can be
very much
hard.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how about, do you have any best strategies or tips that you use to help the students succeed in the classroom? Anything you find
Um,
yourself using over and over again?
I do. In fact, something that I have shared with a few people that I've discovered, especially with my students on the spectrum and trying to get them to write, is they have such a hard time with the abstract ideas, being able to visualize something that you're explaining to them, or think about a story or that kind of thing. So I use pictures quite a bit to work on handwriting with students. In fact, anytime I take a picture of something in my day-to-day life, I have a folder in my pictures called descriptive writing. And if it's an action that's happening, we can create a sentence about it. So I mean, it's a good way to get them to write. They're describing what they see, because it's like I said, it's the abstract pieces are very hard for them, and it's been a challenge to try to find. You think about the pictures we normally take are all posed. So I
Right,
mean, that
right.
doesn't say anything that's happening. Yep, we're all standing there, but
Yeah,
when you're
yeah.
catching an action that's happening, someone fishing or someone swimming, or activities like that to where you can get the student to talk about it and then work on how do we put this on paper. That's been really useful to get my students working on their handwriting. It's really been
And
great.
functional too, when you're saying you're using real photographs, of
Yes,
things that they might land up seeing in their regular day-to-day life as well.
right,
So seems very
right.
functional too.
Yeah.
That's an excellent suggestion. So anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
No, it's been certainly great for you to reach out to me. I know that I reach out to your site quite often as a resource for me. A lot of the materials that you have on the site are phenomenal, and I use them quite a bit in my practice, and I appreciate
Oh, thank
people
you.
like you being out there.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad you came on. This has been really interesting. It's so great to see, a lot of us, I'm a PT, like I said, but we all kind of land up working in isolation. You work with, 5 total OTs, but at the end of the day, it's not how many teachers, there's so many more teachers in a building than there is
Right.
OTs in a building. So it's just interesting to talk to everybody and how their day goes and the types of students that they're working with. It really is an amazing career. So, and like you said, it changes when you went from the nursing home to schools, it's very
Definitely.
adaptable. So, and I'm assuming you won't be leaving the schools anytime soon.
As long as I can physically do it,
Yes,
I'm
yes,
gonna.
that is
My plan is
difficult
to stay.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But not going back to the nursing homes.
Who knows?
Yep,
Who
yep,
knows?
yep. You're leaving
Too
that
early to
window
say. I
open.
can. Yeah, I leave any window open with this
Exactly.
career.
Smart. Yeah.
Nice
And
thing
that's the
about our
nice thing
career.
about the career. Absolutely. The same could be said for PT. So it is a huge benefit. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and stay tuned for all the additional video interviews for the Day in the Life series. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Margaret.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining your therapy source for this Day in the Life series hosted by Margaret Rice. Visit yourtherapysource.com for more information to help students succeed.